I didn't realize the first wound was when he stopped calling me Mom. It was a slow erosion, like the sea gnawing at a cliff edge. You don't notice the collapse until the land gives way beneath your feet. One day, I was his mother-warmed dinners, kisses on scraped knees, lullabies in the dark. The next, I was just a woman who lived in the same house, too silent, too slow, too much. My name is Helen. I am 73 years old, and for 15 years, I was emotionally abused by the very child I brought into this world. His name is Aaron, and I loved him with everything I had until I learned that love doesn't mean staying where you are being destroyed. It began after his father died. We lost Richard suddenly, a stroke that claimed his life within a week. I still remember the hospital room, the way Aaron stood beside me, stiff as stone, his jaw clenched as though grief was a thing to be wrestled, not felt. He was 29 then, a man, but I could see the frightened boy behind his grown-up face. The funeral came and went in a blur of black clothes and casseroles. Then Aaron said, "Why don't you move in with me, Mom? There's no reason for you to stay in that big, empty house alone." I thought it was kindness. I didn't know it was the first step in a long undoing. At first, it was small things: my teacup left in the wrong spot, my slippers in the hallway. "You're getting forgetful, Mom," he'd say with a forced smile. "Try to keep the place tidy." I nodded. I apologized. I told myself he was adjusting, grieving. But it didn't stop. It turned into sighs when I asked a question, eye rolls when I made a suggestion, whole dinners where he stared at his phone while I sat across from him, pretending not to notice the silence between us growing roots. Then came the sarcasm. "Wow, Mom, you made toast. Are you sure you can handle the toaster without supervision?" I laughed the first time. It was easier than crying. But inside, something cracked. He stopped calling me Mom around the third year. Now it was her, said with a sneer when he spoke to his wife, "Jenna, did you see what she did? She left the stove on again. It's like babysitting a toddler." Jenna never looked at me directly. She smiled politely at family dinners and left the room when Aaron raised his voice. I used to think she didn't know. Later, I realized she knew. She just chose to look away. One evening, he lost his temper over a towel. A towel. I had used the one he kept in the guest bathroom, his gym towel, apparently. He stormed into the living room, eyes wild. "You never listen. Do you think I like coming home to find everything touched, moved, used? This is my house, not your little retirement home." I stood there, frozen, my fingers clutching the edge of the chair. "It's just a towel, Aaron," I whispered. "And this is just you being in the way, again," he snapped. That night, I cried in the shower. Quietly. Because if he heard me, he'd say I was being overdramatic. I learned to shrink, to tiptoe, to apologize before speaking. I cooked meals and left them on the counter like offerings to a god whose approval I'd never win. I folded his laundry just the way he liked, organized the pantry, stopped wearing perfume because he said it made him nauseous. Once, I asked him if we could go out to dinner, just the two of us, like we used to when he was a boy. He scoffed. "You want me to parade around town with my elderly mother like I'm a mama's boy?" I nodded and said, "Of course not." But my heart said, "Please, just remember me. Remember when I was everything to you." When my pension came in, he asked if I'd help with a few bills. I didn't mind. He had a mortgage, 2 kids, a wife on maternity leave. What kind of mother doesn't help her son? Then it became monthly. "Just until we get through this rough patch," he said. But the patch was 15 years long. I began to notice that my birthday was no longer remembered. Mother's Day passed with silence. Christmas gifts were last-minute candles or bath soaps still in the shopping bag. The only time he spoke to me with warmth was when he needed something. "Mom, could you babysit the kids this weekend?" "Mom, the car needs a tune-up. Can we borrow your card?" "Mom, we're thinking of renovating the basement. Can you co-sign the loan?" And every time, I said yes, because I still believed love was sacrifice. Until the day I forgot the kids' school pickup time. It was a genuine mistake. I had written 3:30 p.m., but it was actually 2:30. I arrived late, breathless, full of apologies. The kids were fine. They'd waited inside with the school secretary. But Aaron was livid. He didn't yell. No, this was worse. He looked at me like I was beneath contempt. "You can't even manage this anymore," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time we looked at some care options." Care options. As if I were an object. A problem. A piece of furniture that had grown too worn to keep. That night, I sat in my room, a converted storage room with no windows, and stared at the photograph I kept by my bed. It was from Aaron's third birthday. He was wearing a paper crown, frosting on his cheeks, reaching for me with a toothy grin. That boy was gone. And I finally asked myself, what about me? What about the woman who had stayed silent for 15 years, waiting for a son who only came to take? What about the years I gave up, the pride I swallowed, the tears I hid? What if I stopped waiting for him to change? What if I chose myself? The next morning, I woke before anyone else. I packed one suitcase. I took only what I had brought with me and the photograph. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Aaron, thank you for letting me stay. I raised you with love, and I hoped for love in return. But I now realize I've been living in a home that forgot my name. I am not a burden. I am your mother. I choose peace. Mom. And I walked out the door without looking back. The bus ride to the women's shelter was quiet. I didn't have a plan. I only knew I couldn't keep living in a house where my presence was an inconvenience. I sat by the window, my hands clenched in my lap, watching the city pass by in blurs of color and unfamiliar streets. My heart pounded, not from fear, but something else. Relief. Freedom. A guiltless kind of sorrow. When I arrived, the woman at the front desk looked up with kind eyes. Her name was Clara. Middle-aged, calm, with a voice like warm soup. I'm not abused physically, I said, hesitating. Just emotionally. For a long time. Clara didn't flinch. She simply nodded. That's still abuse, sweetheart. You came to the right place. They gave me a clean room with a small window that overlooked a playground. The bed was stiff, the pillow thin, but it was mine. No one sighed when I made a noise. No one stared at me like I didn't belong. That night, I slept 8 hours for the first time in years. The following weeks felt strange. I learned to breathe again. I volunteered in the kitchen, helped organize donated clothes, and met other women who carried pain in their bones. Some had run from husbands, others from children, and some from themselves. We didn't speak much about the past, but there was comfort in being seen. One morning, as I was folding laundry in the common room, Clara sat beside me. You've got a quiet strength, she said. I smiled, half embarrassed. I don't feel strong. But you walked away, she replied. That takes more courage than most people realize. I nodded slowly. I kept telling myself he'd come around, that if I just gave more, waited longer, he'd love me the way I loved him. Clara touched my hand gently. That's the lie abuse tells us, that love is earned through pain. Her words hit deep, like a key in a lock I'd forgotten existed. Around the third week, I started journaling. I wrote letters to Aaron I never intended to send. Some were angry. Others were filled with memories of his childhood, his first scraped knee, the bedtime stories, the day he lost his first tooth, and asked if the tooth fairy knew our address. I wrote about the boy I raised and the man he became. I asked questions in ink I could never say aloud. Where did I go wrong? When did you stop seeing me as your mother? Was there ever a moment, just one, when you were proud of me? But mostly, I wrote to myself. I'm sorry for the years you were silent. I'm proud of you for leaving. You deserve more than survival, you deserve joy. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Jenna called. Clara found me in the garden, her phone in hand. There's a woman asking for you. She says she's your daughter-in-law. My chest tightened. I stepped away to take the call under the shade of a tree. Helen. Jenna's voice was cautious. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, quieter than I intended. I didn't know you left until this morning. Aaron told the kids you'd gone on a vacation. But then I found your note. Silence. I'm sorry, she added. I should have said something a long time ago. I didn't know what to say. There were too many words, and none of them felt right. Aaron's been angry, she continued. More than usual. He's snapping at the kids. He blames you. Of course he does, I whispered. That's easier than looking in the mirror. Jenna paused. They miss you. The kids, I mean. I felt tears threaten again. Tell them I love them. But I need time. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. Just whispered, I understand. That night, I cried again, not from sadness, but from the ache of everything I had held back. The next day, I signed up for a workshop at the community center. Finding your voice after emotional abuse. It sounded cliché, maybe even corny, but I went anyway. The room was full of women like me. Different faces, same invisible bruises. We took turns sharing. Some wept. Some laughed bitterly. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. My name is Helen. I lived in my son's home for 15 years. He didn't hit me, but he made me feel like I didn't matter. And I let it happen, because I was afraid of losing him. But I lost myself instead. No one clapped. They didn't have to. The looks in their eyes said more than applause ever could. That evening, as I walked back to the shelter, I passed by a music store. Inside, a young man was playing an old piano, something gentle, something mournful. I stood there for a long time, eyes closed, letting the notes untangle something deep inside me. Then I did something I hadn't done in decades. I went inside. "Do you teach?" I asked the clerk. He smiled. "I do. I signed up for weekly lessons." I didn't want to become someone new. I wanted to remember who I used to be. The girl who played hymns in church. The young woman who used to sing to her baby in the middle of the night. My fingers were stiff at first, but slowly, they remembered. The music was buried deep, like seeds in dry earth, and now, it was beginning to bloom again. 1 month passed, then 2. By the 3rd, I had found a small apartment subsidized by a program for seniors. Nothing fancy, just 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a window that caught the morning light. But it was mine. Entirely, peacefully mine. I bought a plant. I gave it a name, Grace, because it reminded me what carried me through. I stopped waiting for Aaron to call. I stopped checking social media for glimpses of my grandchildren. Instead, I wrote. I played music. I baked for my neighbors. I laughed with other women who had also crawled through fire and emerged scarred but alive. And then, one Saturday morning, a knock at the door. I froze. Through the peephole, Aaron. I opened the door slowly, heart pounding. He looked thinner, hollow, but the same eyes ones I had once loved so fiercely stared back at me. "Hi, Mom." I nodded. "Aaron." He stepped forward, hesitated. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the tidy little room behind me, the sunlight on the floor, the scent of fresh bread. "Just for a few minutes," I said. He sat on the edge of the couch like it might bite him. "I didn't expect you to leave," he said. "You've always been there, no matter what." I met his eyes, and that was the problem. He swallowed. "I didn't think I was abusive." "You never do," I said softly. "But I was shrinking, Aaron. Every year, I disappeared a little more." He looked down. "I'm sorry." I believed he meant it or wanted to. But I also knew sorry wasn't a magic eraser. "You're still my mom," he added. "No," I corrected him. "I will always be your mother. But I'm not yours to mistreat. Not anymore." He nodded slowly, and for once, said nothing in return. After a few more minutes, he stood. "If the kids wanted to visit, would you be open to that?" I smiled faintly. "That's between me and them." He nodded again. Then, just like that, he left. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, not broken, not triumphant, just still. And in that stillness, I finally felt peace. I stood by the window for a long while after he left. Outside, the city bustled with life, children running, someone walking their dog, the distant echo of traffic. But inside my small apartment, time slowed, then stilled. There was no yelling, no sighs of disappointment. Just me. And it was enough. Later that day, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out my journal. The words came slowly at first, then with a quiet urgency. "He came today?" I looked into his face and didn't feel small anymore. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to cry. I was grounded, calm, clear. This is what healing feels like, not flashy, not triumphant. Just whole. The next morning, I woke early, as I always did. Made coffee, watered Grace, the plant, and sat at the piano. I'd been working on a song, nothing grand. Just something soft and slow and full of longing. It had no lyrics, only feeling. My fingers moved across the keys, shaky at first, then steadier. I played it again and again until the music felt like breath. At noon, there was another knock. This time, when I opened the door, I saw 2 small figures peeking from behind Jenna's legs. The kids. My grandchildren. "Hi, Grandma," the older one said shyly. Lily. She was 10 now. Beside her, Oliver, just 7, clutched a small drawing in his hand. "I made this for you." I knelt down, tears already welling. They stepped into my arms without hesitation. Their small bodies smelled like sunshine and crayons and familiarity. I held them close and realized how long it had been since I'd touched something that loved me back without condition. "I missed you," Lily whispered. "I missed you too," I said, choking back tears. "So much." Jenna watched us quietly, her eyes softer this time. She didn't try to speak, didn't overstep, just nodded. "I thought they should be able to decide for themselves," she said. I looked at her. For the first time, I didn't see a stranger. I saw a woman caught between a man and a mother he never truly appreciated. Maybe she hadn't protected me, but perhaps this was her way of making it right. They're always welcome, I said gently. But I won't return to that house. You shouldn't, Jenna said. And I think they'll understand more than you know. That afternoon, we baked cookies. The kids helped roll out dough while I told them stories about their father when he was their age. The time he tried to build a rocket out of soda bottles, or how he once cried because he stepped on a ladybug. They laughed, asked for more. Was Daddy always so serious? Lily asked, licking icing from her fingers. No, I said, smiling wistfully. He was soft once, like both of you. I didn't talk about the shouting, the silence, the sighs. They didn't need that. Not now. Before they left, Oliver handed me the drawing. It was me, sitting at a piano with a giant sun behind me. You're a sunshine grandma, he said proudly. I hung it by the window that same evening. In the weeks that followed, the visits became regular. Not every day, not always for long, but enough. Enough to rebuild something precious, brick by careful brick. I never asked about Aaron. I didn't need to. The kids didn't volunteer much, and Jenna kept things surface level. That was fine with me. I had no interest in returning to the shadows of that house. Instead, I kept busy. My music teacher, Ben, encouraged me to play at a local recital for seniors. I nearly said no. What if my hands trembled? What if I forgot the notes? What if no one listened? But then I remembered how I used to sit alone in a silent house, begging silently for my son to say a kind word. This time, I would speak for myself. When the night of the recital came, I wore a soft lavender sweater and my best shoes. Clara came with me. So did 3 other women from the shelter. They sat in the front row, beaming like proud sisters. I took the stage. My hands trembled, of course they did. But when I touched the keys, something took over. The song flowed through me like warm rain. Halfway through, I saw Lily and Oliver sneak in with Jenna, waving excitedly from the side aisle. I smiled, and I kept playing. When I finished, the room filled with applause. But the loudest sound I heard was my own heartbeat, steady and strong. Alive. Later that night, Clara hugged me tight. You were magnificent. I was terrified, I admitted. And yet you played, she said. That's what strength looks like. When I got home, there was a letter waiting in my mailbox. Aaron's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. My hands shook worse now than they had at the recital. Inside was a single page. Mom, I don't know how to explain what I've done, or who I became. I thought being hard made me strong. I thought your silence meant everything was fine. But now the house feels emptier than ever. The kids talk about you like you're magic. I wish I had seen it sooner. I'm sorry. I'm still learning how to be a better man. I hope, one day, you can forgive me. Aaron. I read it twice. Then again. And for the first time in years, I didn't cry over Aaron. I cried for me. For the girl who once dreamed of a quiet life. For the mother who gave too much. For the woman who finally said, enough. By the end of the summer, I had joined a local seniors group that visited nursing homes to sing and play music. We weren't perfect. We hit wrong notes, forgot lyrics. But every face we touched, every smile we earned, was real. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Helen, a mother, a pianist, a woman reborn. And though I would always carry the ache of what I had lost, I no longer wore it like armor. It had become something else now, a reminder that I mattered, that I was enough, just as I was. And that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's healing. It's love, the kind we must first give to ourselves. A few weeks after the recital, I received a phone call from the local library. They had heard about my performance through the senior center and wanted to know if I'd be interested in leading a weekly music circle for retired women. We don't need a professional, the woman on the phone said gently. Just someone with heart and patience. I laughed. Well, I have plenty of both these days. And so, on Thursday mornings, I began hosting a small group in a dusty back room lined with donated books and mismatched chairs. We called ourselves the Silver Strings. Most of us hadn't touched an instrument in decades. Some had never played at all. But it wasn't about perfection, it was about reclaiming something. A voice, a rhythm, a joy we'd all been told we were too old, too tired, too broken to deserve. Among the regulars was Doris, sharp-witted, 82, with arthritic hands and a contagious laugh. Then there was Maria, who barely spoke English but had an uncanny sense of timing on the tambourine. And Ruth, the quiet one who came every week and never played, only listened with eyes that shimmered at the corners. One morning, after we finished a shaky but heartfelt version of What a Wonderful World, Ruth lingered behind. "My husband used to sing that to me," she said, her voice trembling, "before the cancer took his voice." I reached out, gently touching her arm. "Then we'll keep singing it for him," I whispered. We became more than a music circle. We were a little family, a patchwork of bruised hearts mending side by side. And in that room, we weren't forgotten women. We were creators, carriers of stories, keepers of rhythm. One rainy Sunday afternoon, as I was finishing a crossword at the kitchen table, the phone rang. It was Aaron again. I hesitated before picking up. I had set firm boundaries, short conversations, no guilt, no pleas to return. But today his voice sounded different. Not performative, just small. "Hi, Mom." "Hi." There was a pause. Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Depends," I said carefully. "I've been going to therapy." That stopped me. "For a few months now," he added. "I started after you left. It wasn't just about you. I've been angry at everyone, myself included." I closed my eyes. "I blamed you for things that weren't your fault," he continued. "I resented you for aging, for needing me, because I wasn't ready to grow up, and I punished you for reminding me that time doesn't stop." His voice cracked. "I was cruel to you, Mom. And I see it now. I see all of it." I let the silence stretch before I replied. "Aaron, I never wanted perfection. I only ever wanted respect. To be seen, heard, treated like I mattered." "I know," he whispered. More silence. "Would it be okay if I came to hear you play one day?" he asked. "Nothing more. I just want to see you doing something that makes you happy." The part of me that had waited 15 years for him to say that began to stir. But I didn't answer as a mother longing for redemption. I answered as a woman who had finally come home to herself. "Yes," I said. "You can come, but only if you leave your judgment at the door." "I will," he promised. "I really will." The following Thursday, he came. He stood at the back of the library room, quiet, hands folded nervously as we played. I didn't introduce him. I didn't glance his way. I let the music carry me, as it always did. But when we finished and everyone laughed at our missed notes and offbeat rhythms, I caught his eye. He looked at me, truly looked, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Pride. When the others left, he approached me, slowly. "I forgot how beautiful you are when you're happy," he said softly. I nodded. "That's because I haven't been, for a long time." He didn't apologize again. He didn't cry. He simply said, "I'm glad you're finding your way back." And then, "Can I bring the kids next week?" I smiled. "They'll love it." The next few months unfolded gently. No dramatic apologies. No false promises. Just small, steady efforts. Aaron called more often, not to ask for help, but to share things. His therapy, his thoughts, memories of childhood he had long buried. "I remember once," he told me over coffee, "you stayed up all night to make me a rocket costume for Halloween. It was made out of cereal boxes and duct tape." I laughed. "It took me 5 hours, and you tore it off in 10 minutes because it was too itchy." He chuckled, a real, boyish laugh I hadn't heard in years. Sometimes, healing is that simple. Remembering the love before the hurt. One evening, I received a call from Clara. "You up for speaking at the shelter?" she asked. "Some of the newer women, they need to see what life after can look like." I was hesitant. I wasn't a motivational speaker. I didn't have a degree or a perfect ending. But I had truth. So I agreed. I stood in front of a dozen women, most with eyes cast down, arms crossed protectively. "I was where you are," I said. "I didn't think I could leave, and when I did, I thought I'd be alone forever." I paused. But what I found was that alone doesn't mean unloved. It means making space for peace, for possibility. I took a deep breath. I don't have all the answers, but I have music, friends, grandchildren who know the real me now. And more importantly, I have myself. There were no cheers, just quiet nods, silent tears. But one woman stood and asked, "Do you think people like us can really start over?" I smiled. "We don't start over. We start from here. And that's more than enough." That night, I walked home under the stars. I thought about the woman I had been, the one who waited by the door, who lived on eggshells, who begged for crumbs of kindness. She still lived in me, in the shadows. But now, there was also light. There was Helen. Whole. Seen. free. And for the first time in a very, very long while, I was enough. You're just lonely, Marcia's new friend, Dottie, said one morning over coffee. But you're not alone anymore. You've got us now. And more importantly, you've got you. It was a sentiment Marcia never realized she needed. She had been so conditioned to believe that her worth depended on being useful and serving, sacrificing, tolerating. Now, in the quiet rhythm of her new life, she was discovering the richness of her own presence. She joined a community painting class. The first time she held a brush, her hand trembled. She painted a broken window with a ray of sunlight pouring through it. The instructor stood behind her silently for a moment, then simply said, "That's powerful." Marcia blinked away the tears. "I think I was trying to paint my life," she whispered. People in the group nodded, understanding in the way only those who've survived can. They shared their own stories of children who stopped calling, of nursing homes that felt like punishment, of lives interrupted by caregiving until their own identities faded. Marcia didn't feel alone anymore. One Sunday afternoon, while walking through the park near the senior center, she saw a mother and son sitting on a bench. The boy, maybe 10, was leaning against his mother's shoulder as she read aloud from a book. A tightness wrapped around Marcia's heart. For a fleeting second, she saw herself and Evan. She remembered the way he used to chase butterflies and bring her flowers, how he used to cry if she scraped her knee. When had he stopped seeing her as a person? But she didn't cry. She smiled softly, sadly, and walked on. Because now she had clarity. Evan's cruelty didn't erase the love she once gave. It didn't erase who she was. Weeks passed, then months. Dottie's health declined, and Marcia was there every day, holding her hand through chemo. Through the days Dottie forgot her own name. Love flowed again from Marcia, not out of obligation, but freely, because she chose to give it. And that made all the difference. Then, one bright spring morning, Marcia received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was unfamiliar, stiff. She opened it slowly. "Mom, I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe because I finally saw myself clearly and it scared me. Jenny left me. She said I was cold, controlling, that I reminded her of someone and I knew she meant you. I'm sorry. For everything. For how I treated you. For making you feel invisible, small. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted to say I see it now. I see you. Evan." Marcia sat with the letter in her lap. Her heart raced, but not with rage. It was quiet. It was steady. She didn't cry. She didn't write back either. Not right away. Instead, she made tea, sat by her favorite window, and watched the light dance across the trees. She thought of forgiveness not as a gift to Evan, but as a gift to herself. That night, she wrote a short note in return. "Evan, thank you for your letter. I hope you grow into someone you can live with. I already have. Mom." And she meant every word. Marcia never went back to that house. Never again begged for a place at a table she helped build. Instead, she created her own table full of warmth, of friendship, of art and laughter, of life. At 80, she threw herself a birthday party. She wore a red dress, danced barefoot under lanterns. Dottie's niece baked the cake, and the whole senior center sang off-key and too loudly, but it was perfect. Someone asked if she had any regrets. "Only that I waited so long to choose myself," she said with a smile. "But I'm here now, fully, and that was enough." For the first time in decades, Marcia belonged to no one but herself.